Imagine the following scene. A smart 32-year-old woman graduated in economics with a promising career in one of the best audits in the city. Everything in his life seemed to be set until the moment when, with a simple check in the bank's app, his world collapsed. This woman is Marina Belozerskaya, and the story you will hear now is about how, in a matter of seconds, she found that the person she trusted most was able to betray her as cowardly as possible. Marina has always been proud of her planning. He had everything calculated: the sale of the apartment of a room he had inherited from his grandmother, the money stored meticulously, the dream of buying a larger property with her husband, Oleg. The 3.5 million of the sale were already in the joint account, added to the economies of the couple, totaling almost 5 million, enough for the entrance of the new apartment. I was just a week ago to the meeting with the broker, but as I had a chamomile tea in the kitchen, something made her freeze. The balance on the phone screen showed just over 3 million. Where was the receipt? It was then that he saw a 1.5 million transfer to Larsa Stepanovna Medvedev, Oleg's mother, with the justification home aid. The hands shake. The air was dense, as if someone had sucked all the oxygen from the room. Her heart was hitting so hard that she swore to hear the sound of the ribs about to crack. With a dry sip of cold tea, she dialed her husband's number. Oleg, can you explain to me why 1.5 million disappeared from our account? His voice came out strangely serene, but inside it was a hurricane. And the answer, a tone of indifference that cut her as a blade. Ah, have you seen? My mother was in need of the money to get into a house in the fields. I helped. She returns later. Don't worry. Marina felt the floor open. Oleg, this money was from my apartment, the only good I had before we got married. We were going to use for our house, but for him, it was all details. Marin, don't overdo it. It's just money. My mother is elderly, needs more than us. We're new, earns more. At that moment she understood. It was not about money. It was about loyalty. For years of marriage. And she always knew that his mother came first, but never imagined that she would get to that point. The betrayal hurt more than any financial loss. And that's when Marina decided she wasn't going to wait. It wasn't going to cry. I was going to act. The next morning, while Oleg still slept, she left home with a clear goal. First, the notary's office. As a finance professional, he knew he needed to document everything. Then a lawyer. Then he went straight to the bank. He removed what was left of the joint account and opened a new one, only in his name. When Oleg arrived at work, he found the cold dinner and a woman he no longer recognized. I spoke to his mother today, said Marina, looking at him in the eyes without blinking. Oleg froze, the fork in the air. And what Larsa Stepanovna said, she wasn't going to buy any home. She used the money to pay for her sister's college in Europe. He tried to justify himself, stuttering, Marin, you're confusing things. My mother changed her mind, thought the study of Sveta was more important. What difference does it make? The money was in the family. In her family, Oleg, not in ours. She cut. Tomorrow I entered the divorce. The followed scandal was breathtaking. Larsa Stepanovna declared war, calls at any time, visits without warning, hysterical accusations that Marina was destroying her family by mere numbers. Oleg, divided between mother and wife, in the end always chose the first. You're crazy. My son was the best thing that ever happened to you. The mother-in-law shouted, invading the apartment without being called. For a money mix, you throw it all out. Marina held her wrist when the woman tried to lift him. If you don't leave now, I call the police. And I still get another test for process by fraud. 4 months later, the verdict left. Marina, you had moved to a rented apartment and dipped at work so as not to go crazy, presented irrefutable evidence. Recordings where her mother-in-law admitted to have taken the money without permission and without intention to return, as well as testimonials from Oleg's own sister confirming the version. In court, Larsa Stepanovna tried to make a victim, claiming a verbal loan, but the recordings didn't lie. I took it, so you live in luxury, and my daughter needed to study, he shouted, without any remorse. Oleg is my son. He had every right to use family money from your family, said Marina. Impassive. The judge was exhaustive. The transfer was considered illegal. Larsa Stepanovna would have to return every penny, with interest and costs. The divorce was finalized on the same day. As he left the forum, the former maid spit her last hateful words. You'll still regret it. Oleg was the best you ever had in life. Marina smiled for the first time in months. Your mistake. The best thing that happened to me was to find out the truth about you both before we had children. A week later, the money was back on your account. Larsa Stepanovna was forced to sell her 3-bedroom apartment and move to a conjugate on the periphery. Sveta interrupted her studies in Europe and got a job to help her mother. 5 years passed. Marina, now sitting on a cozy coffee, looks out the window and reflects. That pain, which once seemed unbearable, was actually her greatest blessing. Because some losses frequent us from chains we didn't even know we carried. The coffee was in the heart of the city. When Oleg approached his table with hesitant steps, time had marked his face with lines that did not exist before, and his eyes carried a tiredness that even the best sleep could erase. "Can I sit down?" he asked, his voice shaking like sheet in the wind. Marina nodded with a serene gesture, observing how he settled in the chair with the posture of those who carry more than just the weight of the years. "How are you?" He finally broke the silence after a very uncomfortable interval to be filled with empty words. "Well," she answered, discreetly lifting her left hand so that the sunlight filtered out the window, reflected in the gold ring that now shone on her finger. "I married 2 years ago. We have a son, Mikhail, 8 months." Oleg's lips outlined something between a smile and a grimace. "Congratulations," he murmured, while his fingers played with the edge of his cup of coffee, as if they sought an anchor in the sea of memories that separated them. "I separated again, for the second time." His confession came out like a sigh, loaded with a shame he no longer tried to hide any more. "No need to apologize," she said, cutting the air before he dived deeper into the well of self-deemed. "You were right about my mother, Oleg," her eyes fixed at some point beyond her, as if she finally saw the truth that for so long she refused to see. "She destroyed my second marriage as well, always interfering, manipulating, as if people were pieces on their private board." Marina watched him with a calm that only those who already crossed the fire could have. There was no triumph in his gaze, only the clarity of those who understand that some lessons are only learned when pain becomes unbearable. "And Sveta?" she asked, remembering her sister that one day out of the silent accomplice of those games. "He married a university colleague. He lives in Germany." Oleg lowered the voice, as if what came next was a shameful secret. "It hardly talks to my mother any more. After that episode she was ashamed to have accepted that money." The followed silence was filled only by the soft sound of the summer rain beating the glass, transforming the rin liquid mirrors that reflected a world that was no longer theirs. "You know," Oleg broke into mutism, the hoarse voice of emotion contained, "I often wonder how our life would have been if I didn't. It's not worth it." Marina interrupted, soft but firm. "Things happened as they should." His eyes found his, and for the first time Oleg saw in them not grudge, but a peace he himself had never known. "Did you forgive me?" he risked, as if the answer could somehow relieve the weight he carried. She reflected for a moment, not for doubt, but out of respect for the complexity of what they lived. "I don't keep hatred, if that's what asks, but what happened has transformed me. It made me stronger. He taught me to defend my space, my value." An almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "And in a way I'm grateful. To you, to your mother, because without that betrayal, I would never have found the life I deserve." It was then that a tall shadow stopped on the table, followed by the cheerful nurse of a baby. "Honey!" Mikhail woke up and is asking for Mom, said a warm and safe voice. Anton, with his son in his arms, looked at Marina with a devotion that went beyond love. It was admiration. It was complicity. It was the kind of look that Oleg had never been able to offer him. "Oleg, this is my husband, Anton, and our son, Mikhail," she introduced, while the boy stretched his arms toward him. Men exchanged a brief, but enough hand tight for Oleg to feel once again the abyss that separated them. Marina pressed her son against her chest, inhaling that sweet and unique baby smell that, for her, was the perfume of redemption. "We need to go," he announced, rising with the grace of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. "It was unexpected to see you," balbucinated Oleg, as if seeking words that did not exist to fill that emptiness. "Yes, it was," she agreed, without lying, but also without offering false promises. "We may see each other again." They both knew it would not be true. While leaving the coffee protected by the umbrella Anton held on them, Marina cast one last look over her shoulder. Oleg remained curved on the table, his fingers still wrapped around the cold cup, his eyes accompanying his silhouette until the door closed between them. For a second, she felt a twinge of pity. But then Mikhail had burst out something incomprehensible, with an enthusiasm that only babies have, and everything else has dissolved. There was no room for regrets in your heart. That money, which had almost destroyed it, had actually been the price of his freedom. A freedom that led her to a life where she was loved not for convenience but by choice, not out of obligation, but by devotion. In Larisa Stepanovna, they say, that still dwells that tiny apartment on the periphery, repeating to those who want to hear, or rather, to the few who still tolerate their regrets, the story of the ungrateful daughter-in-law, with the 1.5 million stolen, with a weak son who could not hold his family. But each year, listeners become rare, because the world, after all, has little time for those who insist on living stuck in the past. Meanwhile, Marina goes on, The firm feet on the floor, her son on her lap, and the future finally in her own hands.